Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Slow.
Slow. Yeah, the slow.
This video is going to be 12 minutes long.
24, Bob. We're doing this half time. We got a third level transmutation spell. It is the opposite of haste, right? Hypothetically. This is, haste makes somebody go fast. Slow, it really isn't. But like that's kind of how it's sold. I get the general gist of. It's an action cast, 120-foot range. Components of aromatic material requires a drop of molasses. Duration, concentration up to a minute. This is a spell that before I even get into it, I would love for its effects to be codified as a condition. I think that would be a useful thing, that you could make monsters easier, you could make other abilities at the upper tiers easier, take this effect that Slow provides and make it its own thing. But they don't do that because that would be good for the game. Anyway, you alter time around up to 6 creatures of your choice in a 40-foot cube within range. 40-foot cube. We just talked about cubes with entangle. We talked about squares with entangle.
Yes.
I shouldn't get sidetracked. Each of the target makes must succeed.
This has to be 40 by 45 by 40 because a 40-foot cube, just asking me the cube root of 40 is way too much work for me to do.
That's a great point. Each target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or be affected by the spell for the duration. An affected target's speed is halved. It takes a -2 penalty to AC and dexterity saving throws, and it can't use reactions. On its turn, it can either use an action or a bonus action, not both. Regardless of the creature's abilities or magic items, it can't make more than one melee or ranged attack during its turn. If a creature attempts to cast a spell, the cast time of an action, roll a d20. On an 11 or higher, the spell doesn't take effect until the creature's next turn, and the creature must use its action on that turn to complete the spell. If it can't, the spell is wasted. A creature affected by the spell makes another wisdom save at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect on a success.
You don't care for this spell.
I don't. I don't love slow.
It
does do a lot, but I don't love slow.
I adore it. Hot take. I like this better than haste.
You're just wrong, and that's okay.
It's not even close, actually.
You're still very wrong, and it's still not even close, but it's okay.
Yes. But all right, go ahead. Tell me your grievances.
Okay, I will not deny this does a lot of things. Slow does a lot of words. There's many, many abilities here that do meaningfully contribute in many fights. So up to 6 creatures is a lot of creatures, but it's in a confined area, which is normally like, however many creatures are close. It's kind of like fireball formation, right? That's where the first problem is.
40 feet is pretty big.
Yeah, it's about as big as a 20-foot radius sphere.
Yeah.
Which is fireball formation, which is also
fine.
a 3rd level spell slot. I think I'd rather them be dead than slowed, but we can keep going. So, like, assuming you don't want to just blow them up, and you want to impose this disadvantage on them. It's not really disadvantage, it's a bunch of other things. The penalties that you physically impose have varying ranges of usability, and they affect creatures in very different ways. So, if a creature has a single solid range attack roll, this does literally nothing except the -2 AC. That's functionally all it does, is the penalty to dexterity saving throws and AC. If they were already going to make one range attack around, you don't care to do this. If it was doing a spell, if it's some kind of spellcaster, this is pretty meaningful. It's like a 50-50 shot that it takes half of its turns. It's like sometimes it's affected by this, sometimes it's not. That inconsistency isn't great. The inconsistency is already attached to a saber die, so that's already fairly inconsistent. On top of all of those things, if you're casting this, you want more than one round out of it while it is being meaningful, while it is doing major saber die stuff. So if something is ever making attacks while slowed, I'm not really happy with what slow's doing. If a creature's ever able to fail one save and then pass the next, I'm probably still not that happy with what slow is doing, just because of how robust other good saber dies are. And with the ability to target specifically like important enemies with it, I'm a lot happier to do something like a hold person. I'm a lot happier to do something like a polymorph or a banishment than this slow, which is like they still get to exist, and sometimes they're going to be majorly affected, and then they're not going to be majorly affected. The consistency is all over the place here. I don't like spells that are inconsistent like this.
I don't mind that. I like to roll the dice a little bit. Yes, it's a save or die, but it's one of those you can target up to 6 creatures.
Mm-hmm.
The odds are good you're going to slow down something, and probably multiple things.
Yeah, I'm just still in the camp. How often is that exactly what you want?
All right. One, not every creature has a ranged attack.
It's true. Definitely
2,
true.
a lot of creatures have multiple attacks, and
Yep.
this limits them to 1. Spellcasters are a thing. That's
So here's a question for you.
yes.
If we're looking at a creature that's making multiple attacks, are you happy with spending a 3rd level spell reducing one creature's attacks from 2 to 1? Is that worth the slot to you for a saber?
One creature?
One creature.
Probably not.
2 creatures.
Maybe.
But maybe.
I mean, doing other things too, reducing their armor class, reducing their dex saves. If you've got somebody flinging fireballs at somebody else flinging fireballs at them, they dex save.
That's true.
Actually,
I will
no,
say,
you could be flinging fireballs because that doesn't require concentration.
Yeah, but like you would have rather done 2 fireballs, right?
I don't know.
I think a lot of time that's going to be my chief, like my primary concern here is that there's just 3rd level spells are really, really tight for wizards and sorcerers. I will say I'm a lot more into this as a bard spell because it's kind of like bard's identity is being the support caster. So as a bard, I absolutely want this on my character sheet for if I'm doing the debilitating thing. I don't really care to do damage. If I know my group's got enough of that going around, slow is a pretty good place to put my concentration. That being said, like it's still not always what I'm reaching for my concentration slot. And again, I like the thinking about encounters where I would like slow, like you suggested. Let's talk about best case scenario. We're working with 4 ogres that are multi-attacking. So we've got 4 creatures that are making 2 attacks around that we're going to reduce their speed. We're going to then watch them waste turns trying to get to us. They're going to fail more saves. We're going to just lay into them, just utterly obliterate them. It's going to be great. We just talked about Entangle.
Yeah.
How is this better than that 1st level spell? It gives the -2 AC, I guess, but like
that's not nothing.
The restrain condition, I think, is better. It gives you advantage on attack rolls against the target.
Yeah, that's good too.
This does hit a bigger area, but that's a 1st level spell with a minute duration. This is a 3rd level spell with a minute duration. I don't love that. That's definitely the best case scenario, I think, is when you're against things that are predominantly melee range, that don't really have other good options. This will eat their turns. There is a good option that exists that does that. Now, albeit it's for completely different classes, for druids. So this might be like, that's where druids are better at this, and this is just the option that wizards and sorcerers get. It's a little bit more of an expensive version of this existing condition that we already know we have a better version of. And that can be fine. I don't hate this. It's just, I'd rather watch my fighter go just slay something.
One more thing I like about it is that it is a concentration spell that does something to help you keep your concentration. Like not directly necessarily, but anytime you're making creatures take fewer attacks or keeping them from getting to you, that's something that a lot of spells do the opposite. Like we were just talking about bestow curse. You got to get up in somebody's face, curse them, and then maintain concentration. This, like, you're slowing them down. You can keep backing up. You can hopefully kill them before they get to you. That's a thing I like.
Yeah, I do really, really like that this isn't just exclusively good against melee creatures. I do also really like that, like you suggested, it defends your concentration, and it also defends your concentration from spellcasters, right? Because the ability to delay their casts can be really effective, because if they waste turn doing nothing, they might just die before the spell resolves, right? Before the spell actually takes place. And that's pretty big. That's pretty meaningfully impactful. Now, hitting multiple spellcasters in a meaningful way with this is a bit tricky, and the whiz save it's going to be worse against those spellcasters than it's going to be against a lot of melee, like big dumb brutes and stuff, but that's kind of a minor grievance. It has a decent amount of flexibility against those 2 kinds of creature types. It's still not if I'm engaging a fight, I don't know if I'm ever reaching for slow first. I might just go, well, okay, there's a bunch of things. I could slow 6 of them, or I could fireball them. Well, there's 3 things. I could just hold one of them and we could kick the crap out of it, and that's a lower level slot, and that's like the other ones might pass anyway. This just could be a better deal in the long term by entirely removing it from the fight. Like, there are a lot of little things that I think I prioritize over what slow's offering, just because I can get more strictly powerful effects in smaller, more confined buckets that are more specialized to the different environments that slow kind of wants to be good at.
I will say, I want to be getting 6 targets when I'm casting this.
That seems unrealistic. I think
That-
four is a lot. If you
Yeah.
get 4 with this, that is pretty excellent. If you get 3 with this, I'm still pretty happy. I think most of the time 2 is going to be the most consistent number, and I'm really not happy with slow from hitting 2 targets. I definitely want to hit more.
I'd probably save my slow for when I have more targets together.
Well, and then you're in the situation, right, where with more targets, they're very, very much so less likely to have multi-attack. Just because, like, your DM doesn't want to throw 6 3-attack creatures at you at once unless you're, like, levels 11 plus. And in that tier, you definitely aren't spending spell slots on slow. You're definitely spending spell slots on higher level concentration effects.
See, I was thinking at that tier, slow becomes a lot cheaper.
Yeah, but
So,
concentration doesn't.
yeah.
Concentration is it's a binary. You have one of it, and it normally goes to whatever the highest level slot in your sheet is.
All right. Well, then I go back to what I said about Entangle. Maybe this is a backup.
Yeah, I can kind of buy that, but then it's also like, well, now the speed reduction matters less because they probably already engaged where they want to be, and like you got a little bit
So
more
maybe,
hiccups.
all right, then maybe you do slow first, and then your cool spell is the backup. That you know, especially if it lasts for like an hour, and you can count on it for being in another fight later.
Yeah, I think if you're going like 3 or 4 fights, this is probably a good way to, in the upper tiers, stretch your resources a bit. Like if you're going to go through a multi-level, several hour-long dungeon, taking this as a relatively early way to deal with a fairly lethal encounter seems like a decent idea. I don't hate that use case. I like it best on bards, but that's more for wizards, maybe. It's not uncastable. I think a lot of times I'll even like in that tier of play, I would love to just see my sharpshooter ranger shoot again. Like I would love to see my Great Master Barbarian just slam into them even harder. And that's something haste provides, which again directly competes with this with the same duration, and it's
But then, like, if you get your concentration broken on haste, don't you become like exhausted or something?
The target does. The target loses a turn. It's really brutal.
Right. Yeah, that's a major consideration.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Big consideration.
because that's one of those where the target is very likely running up into the fray.
Yeah,
unless they're ranged. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's all I had to say about that. That's a big consideration.
that is definitely a big consideration. I'll end on this. I think that this will look really exciting in a vacuum, and then the more you look at it trying to get it to fit in a encounter, it starts to have some holes poked through it, just because there's so many things you can do with a 3rd level spell slot. If the 3rd level wizard list wasn't so good, I would be all about this. But like, I do rate haste higher than this. I do think I want that more often than I want this, just because I know it's going to work. I know it's going to be good. Like, I know that I'm going to see somebody like with a good build dishing out consistent damage every single round, and I can maintain my concentration with the really busted defensive options like shield, really busted defensive options like silvery barbs, right? Like, there's no shortage of ways to defend your concentration on the wizard and sorcerer class. And that makes me kind of go like, I could fire off a slow, which will be kind of meaningful sometimes. Most of the time, it'll hit 2 or 3 things at best. If there's only 4 things I'm hitting and 2 of them save, I'm really sad with that. But that's not going to happen most of the time. I don't know. There's some iffiness about it. I'm just going to take the spell that I know is good and know is consistent. And I don't know the slow is good. And I don't know that slow is consistent. And I know that I can't use this in a lot of encounters where I'd like to. I know that I can always use haste. I know that I can always use fireball. I know I can always use these other consistent, really excellent 3rd level spells. If we cut some of them, if you're tired of using those, yeah, I absolutely can see slow being a great asset to your sheet. I think plenty of people will get a lot of mileage out of it. It's not going to rate particularly highly for me because its competition is so stark.
Yes, 3rd level spells do have a lot of competition.
Unless you're a bard, in which case this is great. Bard is the perfect example. It's like, oh, bards have a kind of a crappy 3rd level list. This is great. This is just a solid saber die that hits a lot of things. That, yeah, it's meaningfully debilitating. It's not as good as some other low level effects, but it's fine. You're a bard.
Yeah, I think a lot of the difference in our opinions comes down to me. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm the gambler, and sometimes I'm not. And in Slow's case, I like that gamble.
Sure. It also it's nice that it does a lot of things too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of words here. Make it a condition, wizards, you cowards. Wouldn't it be great just to like have an ability that says like I hit creature slowed at the end of its next turn? That's so short. I can just say that. I don't have to read 4 paragraphs of text. You can just be like, well, what slowed mean? And you read slow. It's that easy. It's a little condition. It's a little condition thing. It's so much easier. Very gamified language is useful, wizards. Anyway, Slow, I'll give it a 3. I think it's a pretty solid little saber die. I think there's lots of effects that will be more valuable in the instances that they're really good. They'll be excellent, and slow like kind of gets eclipsed by those. But it's still going to be fine. You can put this in a sheet and be really happy with it, I think.
I'm going to irresponsibly give it a 4.
You might be right, honestly. I might be undervaluing this. Commenters, let me know. Is Bob right? Am I right?
Well,
are we both wildly overvaluing this? We're both wildly undervaluing this?
I think this is one of those the opinion really matters kind of spells. Looking forward to hearing the comments on this one. I know I think we've talked about slow in the past on our spell ranking videos. So there has been some discussion and there have been some comments.
I have said nasty things about the spell before, and I do regret that a little bit. It isn't abysmal. It's just not great. It's not amazing.
I'm not the only one out there that likes it as well.
That's true.
All right, let us know what you think down in the comments below, and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, and thank you for watching. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it, a gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns and Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.